The alien vampire queen closed her eyes to die, but when she woke up, she saw a human holding her. The twin sons of Virelon were having a particularly cruel day. They didn't burn. They glared, as if offended by the continued existence of anything that dared stand under them. Metal warped in their gaze. Flesh blistered. And somewhere in the middle of a battlefield that had once been a city and now looked more like a junkyard auditioning for the apocalypse, a body lay still among the scorched debris. Her armor had cracked in 3 places. Not symbolic cracks either. Real, inconvenient ones, like the kind that let molten air in and bits of her out. Her long ears, usually a regal display of sanguine grace, were burnt and twitching weakly in the wind. A throne once followed her wherever she walked. Now she couldn't even lift her hand. Queen Lariska of House Nocturne closed her eyes. There was nothing left. Her empire had folded like a poorly built hover chair. Her people had scattered like frightened plasma rats. And her enemies, so many enemies, were closing in. Let them find a corpse. She'd die with dignity, if not good hair. Her blood, once potent enough to command empires, now soaked into the cracked ground beneath her. The twin suns pressed down harder. Death would be a kindness. And then, arms. Not the ghostly arms of ancestors come to guide her into the void, unfortunately. These ones were sweaty, muscular, cursing softly, and entirely human. Great. Of all the places to crash, I land in a frying pan with a royal vampire pancake. Lariska's eyes fluttered open. It took a moment for the face above her to resolve itself. Tanned, smudged with ash, a day's growth of beard that said either rugged soldier or negligent poet. His eyes were dark, sharp, suspicious. He also had a bandage in his teeth and was attempting, poorly, to tie it around her bleeding side. "What are you doing?" she rasped. "Saving your life. Possibly. Unless I'm hallucinating, which given the heat and the fact that you're glowing slightly, remains on the table." "Are human," she muttered. "Yeah, don't hold it against me." He tightened the bandage with a grunt. She hissed. He didn't apologize. "Let me die," she said. "No thanks. You're too heavy to carry back if you do." Lariska blinked at him, trying to decide whether that was an insult or a joke. Then again, humans had such a peculiar relationship with humor. They laughed at funerals. They made faces at their food. They told stories about ducks walking into bars, none of which ended well for the duck. "Who are you?" "Commander Jace Renner, ex-Alliance Infantry, currently stranded, low on caffeine, and possibly losing my mind." She tried to rise. Her body politely declined. "Don't move," Jace said. "You've got 2 ribs doing the tango in opposite directions, and I think your spleen's on strike." "Vampires don't have spleens," she muttered. "Okay, good to know. I'll update your medical file." He pulled out a small, battered data slate, squinted at it, then tossed it aside. "Never mind. Dead anyway. Battery's fried." A pause stretched between them. The wind kicked up dust that shimmered unnaturally in the light. Far off, the low whine of hunter drones grew louder. "You should kill me," she said finally. "You'd be hailed as a hero. The last vampire queen, slain by your hand." "Hey," he shrugged. "The benefits package isn't what it used to be." Another pause. "I don't understand you." "Story of my life." Jace stood, scanned the horizon, then squatted beside her again with a groan. "Listen, Your Majesty, I'm guessing the whole dying with dramatic flair thing works better when no one's trying to scan your bones with a plasma harpoon. So how about we move this melodrama somewhere less murdery?" She narrowed her eyes. "You mock me. I mock everything. Keeps me sane. Mostly." He slipped an arm beneath her shoulders. She hissed again, this time in real pain, as the movement jostled her broken body. "I'll bite you," she warned. "I've dated worse." "You're absurd. Tell me something new." With effort, she leaned into him, partly because she had no choice, partly because his body heat, coarse and earthy, was oddly comforting. She hadn't been held in decades, not since before the war, not since she'd had to wear armor to breakfast. He carried her through the wreckage, stumbling over craters and charred bones. At one point, he tripped and muttered, "If I die, please avenge me with style." "What?" "Just promise me. Big explosion. catchphrase. Something like, "This is for Jace, you bastards." You know, classic stuff. "You are unlike any soldier I've known." "Thanks, I think." The two suns dipped lower, casting shadows long and cruel across the ruins. As they reached the edge of a shattered dome, a fallen shield generator station maybe, Jace eased her down inside. The air was cooler here, barely. "I'll be back. I saw a supply pod crash a few clicks east. Might have med packs, maybe even something resembling food." She caught his wrist. "You could leave me." "Sure, but then I'd never hear the end of it from your ghost. I'd haunt you creatively. I expect nothing less." He hesitated a moment, then did something that startled her more than the suns, the fall, or the fact she was still alive. He smiled, a small, tired, deeply human smile. Then he vanished into the light. Lareska lay back against the cool stone, her body aching, her mind reeling. Everything had fallen, her empire, her power, her people. And yet here she was, saved by a man with blood under his nails and jokes on his lips. Her fingers curled slightly. This was not how she had expected to die. And for the first time in a very long time, she wondered what it might mean to live. Lareska awoke to the gentle hum of a malfunctioning fan and the unmistakable scent of something burning, possibly electronics, possibly food, possibly the remains of Jace's culinary ambition. A dim light flickered above her, yellow, white, and buzzing, with the effort of remaining relevant. Her body ached in the kind of way that suggested every muscle had filed an official complaint. "You're alive," came a voice, followed by a loud clang and a muttered curse, "which is frankly inconvenient, because I just promised myself I wouldn't get attached to any more homicidal royalty." She blinked and turned her head, which was a mistake. Pain shot down her neck like lightning in a spiteful mood. Jace appeared from behind a stack of crates, cradling something in his arms that looked suspiciously like a very angry coffee machine. "What is that?" she managed. "This," he said, grinning like a man about to make terrible decisions, "is our ticket to survival. Or a caffeine overdose. Or both." He dropped the device onto the table with a theatrical flourish. It hissed. Lareska flinched. The coffee machine let out a long mechanical sigh, then began to shake ominously. "I found it in the supply pod, along with some rations that may or may not be older than your empire. You trust your life to a machine that sounds like it's dying of bronchitis. Lady, I've slept on a plasma cannon during re-entry. My standards are extremely negotiable." Lareska sat up slowly. Her body protested each inch. She was wrapped in a crude bandage of synth cloth and what appeared to be a survival blanket decorated with tiny cartoon lizards. "This is hideous." "Thank you." It was either that or one that said, "Alliance Summer Camp 2214. The lizards seemed less traumatic. She looked around the room. They were inside a derelict skimmer transport, half buried in sand, its systems barely functioning. A few broken panels flickered uselessly. The only thing that worked properly was Jace's voice, which never stopped. "I also brought you some blood synth. Don't get excited. It's military grade, which means it tastes like recycled shoe rubber." He handed her a pouch. She sniffed it, then made a face. "This is not blood. It's, blood adjacent. Budget cuts, you know?" She drank anyway. It was either that or actual death, and she'd already had a close call with that particular event. The fluid was thick, bitter, with the vague aftertaste of regret. Still, warmth began to return to her limbs. Jace plopped down beside her, leaning back against the wall with a satisfied grunt. His armor was scorched, patched in places with what looked like emergency foil and sheer optimism. She found herself studying his profile, the way his mouth quirked when he wasn't trying to look smug. "You had a chance to leave me," she said. "Yup. And you stayed." "Also true. Why?" He was quiet for a moment. The coffee machine sputtered behind them, like it was considering joining the conversation. "Maybe I'm tired of watching people die," he said finally. "Or maybe I just have a thing for long ears." She raised a brow. "Flirt with me again, and I'll eat your liver." "You wouldn't. You'd get a cholesterol overdose." "I'm immune to mortal ailments." "Lucky you. I get acid reflux just looking at those rations. A silence settled between them. Not heavy, but not exactly light either. Outside, the twin suns had finally dipped below the horizon, casting the desert in deep purple and flickering gold. From a slit in the skimmer wall, they could see the ruins, twisted metal, shattered stone, a cathedral reduced to bones. "Do you know what this place was?" Jace asked. Lareska nodded slowly. "A temple. We called it the Cradle of Ember, where queens were named, where bloodlines began. You built your monarchy in a lava pit? It was symbolic." "Of what?" "Poor real estate decisions." She gave him a flat look, then chuckled despite herself. The sound surprised her. It was rusty, unused, like laughter had been locked away with the rest of her past. "You're ridiculous." "I aim to please." She shifted, resting her head back against the wall. "You know what they'll do to you if they find out you helped me." "Oh yeah, court-martial. Probably exile. Maybe a firing squad, if they're feeling traditional." "And you don't care?" He shrugged. "I care. I just have a thing about doing the right thing at the worst possible time." She closed her eyes. "You're either brave or stupid." "Why not both?" The coffee machine hissed again. This time it produced a single cup of something that might have passed for coffee in an alternate universe. Jace picked it up and sipped. He made a face. "Okay, no, that's not coffee. That's a war crime." Lareska took the cup from him and drank. Her eyes widened. "You drink this willingly?" "I never claimed to have taste." "You could at least pretend to care about your health." "I'm traveling with a vampire queen. I think we've already passed that checkpoint." She looked at him for a long moment. "You're not afraid of me." "Should I be?" "Yes." "Well, then I'll pencil that in under things to worry about after we find a way off this planet." She shook her head. "You're insufferable." "Thanks." I try another silence. This time it was warm, tired, companionable. The kind of silence that didn't demand to be broken. Finally she said, "My people are dead. My enemies are many, and I have nowhere left to go." Jace stretched his legs out. "Then we're two peas in a very unstable pod." She turned her head to look at him. "What are we going to do?" He sipped from the cup again, then grimaced. "Well, first we find a ship. Then we get off this rock. After that, we wing it." "We wing it?" It's a military term, very advanced. Means make it up as we go and pray we don't explode. "I see," she said, leaning back again. "How comforting," Jace smiled. "Hey, look at it this way. You've already died once. What's the worst that could happen?" The lights flickered again, and the coffee machine made a noise like a small animal being insulted. Somewhere far in the distance, the wind shifted, carrying with it a faint signal. A pulse. Not natural, not random. They both heard it. Jace stood, eyes narrowing. "Looks like we've got company." Lareska rose more slowly, her strength returning. Her fingers flexed, remembering the shape of a blade. "Then let's make them regret it." He glanced over at her. "You sure you're up for this, Your Majesty?" She bared her teeth in a smile that had once made entire fleets retreat. "I was born for it." The pulse came again, steady, sharp, and unnatural, like a synthetic heartbeat stitched into the wind. It vibrated through the derelict skimmer's walls, shaking a stack of ration boxes just enough for one to fall dramatically, spilling compressed protein cubes across the floor. Jace looked down at the mess inside. "I just cleaned that." "You did not clean anything," Lareska said, stepping lightly over the cubes as she approached the rusted entryway. "You rearranged the chaos." "Same thing. It's all about perspective." She pressed her palm to the wall, feeling the faint thrumming beneath her skin. "This is not a signal meant to be found, which means we absolutely need to find it." He was already slinging on his half-melted armor, each piece clicking into place with the reluctant groan of a machine that had seen too much and been compensated too little. "We could wait," she offered, testing the grip of a short, jagged blade she'd carved from the interior hull earlier. "Let it pass." Jace arched a brow. "And miss the chance to possibly get ambushed, shot at, or kidnapped by strange robots with emotional issues? That's the most exciting offer I've had all week." She rolled her eyes and opened the hatch. The desert beyond had cooled, stars prickling the sky like holes in reality, as if the universe had tried to patch it and ran out of thread. A faint shimmer to the east suggested the pulse's origin. They walked in silence for a time, sand crunching underfoot, distant ruins looming like ancient bones. Lireska moved with predatory grace, her steps light, ears twitching at every shift in the wind. Jace, by contrast, trudged like a man negotiating peace with each rock he tripped over. "How far you think this signal thing is?" he asked. Lireska didn't look back. "Close enough to be a trap, far enough that it'll irritate my ankles." He muttered something about vampire queens and their superior joints, then promptly stepped on something sharp. "Ow! Okay, I take it back. My ankles surrender." They crested a ridge and saw it, a sleek black spire half buried in the sand, humming with the same pulse. Symbols glowed faintly on its surface, shifting and reforming, unreadable. Jace crouched, surveying it. "That's not Varelian tech. Too clean. Too not covered in skulls." Lireska approached cautiously. "It's older than anything I've seen, but the power source, it's active. You think someone's living in it?" "Number, but something wants to be found." He grinned. "Well, good news, spooky spire. Here we are." They stepped inside through a sliver-thin opening that closed silently behind them. The interior was dark until tiny white orbs flickered to life along the walls, revealing a chamber of smooth obsidian and pulsing veins of blue light. "Okay, this is officially the nicest place I've been in months," Jace said, brushing dust off a nearby panel. "No smell of death, no instant gunfire, lighting that doesn't scream budget base." A voice echoed suddenly, soft, mechanical, and disturbingly cheerful. "Welcome, designated user, Lireska Nocturne. Access granted. Please do not die inside the archive." Jace froze. "Okay, that was specific." Lireska looked as startled as he felt. "I've never been here." "You sure? It knows your name." "That's either very cool or extremely concerning." A section of the wall slid open, revealing rows of data crystals suspended in anti-grav fields. The pulse grew louder. Lireska stepped forward. One of the crystals floated down, pulsing in sync with her heartbeat. "I recognize this. It's from the Lost Era, before the split. This place, it's a vault of our beginnings." Jace glanced around nervously. "Any chance those beginnings include a map off this planet and a decent pair of boots?" "Possibly." He was about to make a joke about historical footwear when something moved in the dark beyond the vault. A hiss, a clank, then silence. "Let me guess," Jace muttered. "Security system?" Lireska turned slowly. Something woke up. The room flickered. A tall, insectile machine stepped from the shadows, its limbs too many, its eyes glowing a soft blue. It paused, then emitted a series of tones. "Primary directive, preserve vault integrity, identify intruders." Lireska stepped forward, shoulders squared. "I am Lireska Nocturne, Queen of the House Sanguine. The vault recognizes my blood." The machine paused. A scan passed over her, light brushing against her skin like a curious ghost. "Genetic verification, confirmed. Protocol override, companion unit present, evaluating threat." Jace gave a little wave. "Hi, definitely not a threat. Mostly, I bruise easily." The machine blinked once, then twice, then slowly turned its head a full 180 degrees without moving the rest of its body. "That's deeply unsettling," Jace whispered. "Companion unit status, fragile. Suggest proximity caution." Lireska grinned. "It agrees with me." The machine stepped aside, allowing access to a deeper chamber. "Do you trust it?" Jace asked. "Number, but I've trusted worse." They entered the chamber, where a central pedestal began to rise. Atop it, a hologram flickered to life. A star map, vast and glittering, with several systems marked in crimson. Jace whistled. "Now that's a getaway plan." Lireska pointed to one system near the edge. "That's the old refuge route, used during the first collapse. You think it's still operational? We'll find out." Behind them, the vault door hissed shut. A moment later, a second voice echoed. Harsher, cracked, not machine. "You were supposed to die, Lireska." Both of them spun. A figure emerged from the shadows, tall, cloaked, with long ears and eyes like burned coals. Lareska stepped back. Valier, Jace blinked. Okay, we skipping introductions now? Valier smiled, a horrible, hungry thing. The last queen walks with prey. How poetic. Jace raised his weapon. Prey with a blaster. Valier ignored him. The bloodline ends tonight. Lareska tensed, blade in hand. Jace muttered. You know, I did say we should have stayed in the skimmer. You also said the coffee was drinkable. Touché. And with that, the chamber exploded into motion. Valor moved like a shadow with intent, robes flowing behind him in a way that suggested they were made of something more alive than fabric. His blade was already in hand, obsidian black, humming with low-frequency energy that vibrated in Jace's bones. Lareska didn't wait for ceremony. She launched forward with a hiss that cracked the air. Jace, being a rational man who preferred his limbs unperforated, dove behind a console that looked suspiciously like it could double as an ancient espresso machine. What is it with your people and dramatic entrances? He shouted as sparks rained overhead. They like to make an impression, Lareska called back, clashing steel with Valier in a dance that felt like history trying to rewrite itself through violence. Can't they try interpretive dance? Or haikus? Valier swept his blade in a wide arc, nearly decapitating a nearby statue. The human speaks too much. You wouldn't be the first to say that, Jace muttered, peeking up to line a shot. You threatening me or trying to win a debate? The vault's defenses hadn't kicked in, yet. Jace assumed the ancient AI was still in the middle of some existential crisis about its user preferences. Lareska twisted away from Valor's strike, rolled over the polished floor, and came up with her blade poised to counter. I thought you were dead, she growled, her voice low and dangerous. Valor's eyes glittered. Disappointed? I was hoping it hurt. They moved again, two blurs slicing through air and memory, their footsteps echoing in the chamber, like the ghosts of a fallen empire were applauding. Jace, still behind cover, tapped the side of his helmet. Hey, Vault AI? Little help? A cheerful chime answered. Combat detected. Initiating spectator mode. Spectator mode? Now streaming, Royal Grudge Match, Blood Edition. You have got to be kidding me. The machine from earlier skittered by, pausing briefly to offer Jace a small card. He took it, frowning. Popcorn voucher? Enjoy responsibly. Meanwhile, the duel raged. Valor was fast, too fast. Faster than anyone with a skeleton had any right to be. Lareska was matching him, but Jace could see the strain. Her earlier wounds were slowing her, and whatever healing she'd managed with the blood synth, it hadn't been complete. He popped out of cover and fired a few shots. They sizzled into Valier's shielding, which barely flickered in acknowledgement. Okay, so plan A is out. Do we have a plan B that doesn't end with me being turned into a decorative rug? Lareska parried a vicious strike and spun back. Distract him. That was me distracting him. Well, do it louder. Jace stood fully and yelled, Hey! Valier, your cloak's ugly and your sword's compensating for something. That actually got his attention. Valier paused mid-lunge and looked over with the coldest stare Jace had ever seen. I see the vermin wishes to die first. Jace raised both hands. Whoa, I'm just here for emotional support. And snacks. Lareska took the opening. Her blade struck low, scoring a hit along Valor's thigh. He snarled, turned, and launched a telekinetic wave that threw her into the nearest wall. Jace ran toward her, ignoring the metallic groan of the console that collapsed behind him. You okay? She coughed once, nodded. Don't let him monologue. I'll do my best. Valier advanced slowly, the way predators walk when they know the prey has nowhere left to go. I offered you a way out once, Lareska. You spat on it. I was busy leading a civilization. Forgive me if I missed the part where you betrayed us all. Ah, Valier sighed. So ungrateful. He raised his blade again. And that's when the floor dropped. Literally. The pedestal beneath them shifted, screeched, and collapsed downward as if the vault had finally decided this soap opera needed a change of scenery. Jace grabbed Lareska as they fell, the two of them tumbling through space and code and dimly glowing energy panels until they landed, hard on a lower level, covered in dust and tangled wiring. Above, Vaylor hissed like a man deeply inconvenienced by gravity and vanished into darkness. "Did the vault just dump us?" Jace asked, groaning. "Plot development detected. Relocating protagonists." "Fantastic. The AI thinks it's a writer." Lareska sat up, rubbing her temple. "We need to move. He'll find another way down." "Can't we just not be found for 5 minutes?" The new chamber was different, older, more decayed. Walls blinked erratically, and strange green fluid pulsed through transparent pipes along the ceiling. Jace helped her up and limped toward the nearest console. "You think there's an escape pod buried down here?" "I think this was a research wing," she said, pointing at a long-forgotten stasis pod. Inside floated something humanoid, but with crystalline veins and no face. It was humming softly. Jace leaned in. "Well, that's new. Creepy, but new." Lareska read the ancient inscription. "Genetic vault. Hybrid prototypes." Jace blinked. "You had science projects down here? Please tell me this doesn't end with them waking up and trying to eat us." The pod hissed. Something twitched inside. Jace stepped back. "Okay, that was a rhetorical question, not a challenge." Lareska reached into her belt and withdrew a tiny pulse grenade. "We can't let it wake." He held up a hand. "Wait, what if it's useful?" "It doesn't have a face, Jace. I've worked with worse. One of my captains had a parasite living in his stomach, and we still had pizza night. Your people are strange, and yours are dramatic murder poets." They stared at the pod. The thing inside shifted again. "Fine," Lareska sighed. "We let it wake." The pod opened with a whisper, releasing a cloud of chilled air and a faint artificial scent, something like mint and ozone. The being inside stumbled out, legs unsteady. It stood, cracked its neck, or at least the area where a neck should have been, and turned glowing eyes toward them. Then it sneezed. "Okay," Jay said. "Not the worst first impression." The creature blinked, then spoke in a strangely polite tone. "Query, breakfast?" Jace looked at Lareska. "See? It's adorable." The ground above them shook. Vaylor was coming. Lareska rolled her shoulders. "We have a prototype, a broken vault, and a suicidal coffee machine waiting back in the skimmer." Jace drew his blaster. "Sounds like a party to me." The prototype blinked again, blinked a third time, more out of curiosity than necessity, judging by the small puff of energy that escaped each shutter of its crystalline eyelids. It regarded Jace and Lareska with polite confusion, tilted its head at an angle that suggested either calculation or the early signs of jazz appreciation, and asked again, "Query, breakfast?" Jace looked at Lareska. "I think it's broken, or it's been asleep so long that it's skipped lunch for the last millennium." Lareska didn't lower her blade. "It's a hybrid construct with unknown programming, and it's speaking in a pre-collapsed dialect. Could be a sleeper weapon." The creature took a cautious step forward, its joints humming faintly like tuned strings. "Correction. Preferred designation is Subject 12. I am not broken. I am peckish." "Well, that's relatable," Jace muttered. "What do you eat? Nutrient bars, crystals? I have some expired gum. Organic matter and photonic charge cells." "I have none of that. But I could throw together something with leftover coffee sludge and sand." Lareska finally lowered her weapon, if only by an inch. "Why were you stored in the genetic vault?" "Purpose unknown. Memory core damaged. I have vague recollections of a lab technician named Gorb who talked to me about taxes." "That sounds like torture," Jay said. "He wept frequently. May I travel with you?" Lareska hesitated, then nodded once. "Until we decide what you are." "I am Subject 12. "That doesn't help." "I am very polite." "That does." The ceiling groaned. Dust sifted down. Above them, the sound of metal being torn from metal echoed like the planet itself was grinding its teeth. "He's coming nearer," Lareska muttered. Jace sighed and patted 12 on what he assumed was the shoulder. "Well, buddy, looks like your breakfast is going to be violently interrupted." "I dislike interruptions," 12 said evenly, then extended a hand. A shimmering hex shield burst to life around him, bathing the corridor in a soft teal glow. "I will assist in our escape." Lareska gave Jace a pointed look. "He's more useful than you." "Let's not rush to comparisons," Jace said. I also make excellent jokes under pressure. Prove it. He opened his mouth, then paused. Okay, I need more time. And less impending doom. They ran through the lower corridors, guided by flickering lights and the occasional vault AI voice offering dubious encouragement. Please remember, fire suppression systems are offline. In the event of combustion, panic calmly. Panic calmly, Jace yelled. What is that? Like screaming in lowercase? They reached a sealed door etched with unfamiliar runes. Lareska placed her hand on the console. Nothing happened. System locked, she said. Biometrics aren't enough. 12 stepped forward. I possess clearance. He pressed a finger to the same panel. The runes flared to life, and the door slid open with the reluctant hiss of ancient tech having a bad day. Jay stared at him. You couldn't have led with that? I wanted to gauge trust. You gauged trust by letting us almost die? 12 gave him a serene look. Yes. They entered a massive chamber lit from above by shafts of energy cutting through the sand-stained dome. In the center stood a skimmer, sleek, old, and half-buried in cables. Lareska moved to it quickly, prying off a rusted side panel. This model runs on dark fusion cells. If we can get it charged, we might just make it past the blockade. Or explode trying, Jace said helpfully. I like your optimism. I call it cautious despair. 12 stepped toward the skimmer, then extended both arms. Thin filaments extended from his fingertips and burrowed into the hull. Lights blinked across the vessel, and the engines coughed like a heavy smoker who just remembered oxygen. Systems online, Courtney, he said. Remind me to never play poker with this guy, Jace muttered. The ceiling above shattered inward with a roar. Valir dropped into the chamber like a prophecy fulfilled too soon. His cloak was gone, his blade burned with angry crimson, and his eyes locked on Lareska like she owed him money and an apology. I will end you, he said calmly. You keep saying that, she replied, circling wide. But here I am, very much unended. Yet, Jace raised his blaster again. You know, if you two could maybe settle this with a game of cards, I'd be deeply grateful. Valir ignored him, which honestly hurt Jace's feelings a little. He was starting to suspect this guy didn't appreciate sarcasm, or maybe just had tunnel vision when it came to vendettas. Lareska moved, darting toward the skimmer. Valir struck. 12 stepped between them, shield flaring, absorbing the blow with a hiss of energy. He staggered back, circuits sparking. That was unpleasant, he said, then collapsed like a polite statue. No! Jace shouted. He was my second favorite person here. Lareska launched forward, blade drawn, parrying Valer's attack midair. The force of the impact drove both of them back against the wall. Jace rushed to the skimmer, flipped open the cockpit, and started yelling at systems until something responded. Come on, boot faster, you ancient toaster! The engines flared. Valir turned toward the sound, face twisted in fury. Lareska shouted, Now! Jace slammed the activation pad. The skimmer lifted, hovering a few inches off the ground. 12! He shouted. The hybrid groaned, one arm twitching. Low power, but I can leap. Do it! 12 launched himself awkwardly into the cargo hold. Jace pulled him inside, then leaned out the hatch. Lareska! She was still fighting Valir, blades clashing like sparks off a dying star. Then suddenly she ducked, rolled, and sprinted. She jumped. Jace caught her wrist just as Valir lunged. The skimmer shot up, engines roaring. The hatch slammed shut. Below, Valir shrieked something in an ancient tongue that sounded like an insult you needed 3 lungs to pronounce. Inside the skimmer, everything trembled. Alarms blared. Systems bickered in outdated dialects. Jace looked at Lareska. So, that went well. She grinned, breathing hard. We're not dead. Yet, from the corner, 12 lifted his head. Query, breakfast still possible? Jace dropped into the pilot seat, shaking his head. You can have mine. I'm too stressed to chew. And as the skimmer broke through the upper vault, sunlight flooding the cabin, Lareska whispered, He won't stop coming. Jace flicked a few switches and grinned. Then he better learn how to run faster. The skimmer hiccuped twice and then decided it would fly like its honor was at stake. It hurtled over the fractured plains of Virayum, weaving between crystalline monoliths and half-collapsed towers that jutted from the sand like broken teeth. Jace held the yoke in a death grip, trying to convince the controls not to fall apart under his very mortal fingers. "This thing steers like a drunken pterogator," he muttered. Lareska, strapped into the seat beside him, glanced at the display panel with a frown. "You're pushing the plasma manifold past safety limits." "Great. Add plasma implosion to our list of problems. It'll go nicely with vengeful ex-general from your ancient vampire empire and hybrid who wants breakfast more than self-preservation." In the rear compartment, Subject 12 stirred from where he was half-slumped against a wall. He blinked at the sparks raining from a nearby panel. "Observation. Systems appear suboptimal." "You think?" Jace snapped. "You're the walking science project. Can you fix anything in here?" 12 extended one spindly arm toward a flickering console, his fingers elongated like liquid metal and plugged directly into the ports. "Rebooting secondary stabilizers. Reconfiguring thrust vectoring. Suggest reducing speed before we enter atmosphere." Jace stared out at the blood-red clouds on the horizon. "We're still on Viralone. There is no atmosphere." "Then brace for impact." The skimmer pitched violently, dipped, and somehow righted itself mid-spin. Jace's stomach performed a backflip, received a standing ovation, and then threatened mutiny. "I liked it better when he was unconscious," Jace groaned. Lareska was already checking their coordinates. "We need to make it to the Obelisk Grove. There's an old relay station buried under the roots. Might still be transmitting." Jace squinted. "Sounds cozy. Does it come with a continental breakfast? A do not disturb sign? Maybe a friendly squirrel?" "It comes with shadow beasts and electromagnetic fog." "Okay, so no squirrel." 12 finished his recalibration with a satisfied hum. "Propulsion stabilized. Structural integrity at 40%. External sensors detect hostile signatures within 200 kilometers in closing." "Of course they are," Jace said, punching in the new heading. "We can't even get 5 minutes to feel smug." Lareska tightened her harness as the skimmer banked. "Valyr's probably tracking my blood signature. He'll follow until one of us is ash." "I don't like that plan." "Then kill him first." "That's your plan." "That's my every plan." 12 cocked his head. "Alternative suggestion. Activate prototype beacon embedded in your spinal column." Lareska whipped her head around. "You're not supposed to know about that." "I know many things I am not supposed to know. For instance, your third rib on the left side is regrowing slower than standard regenerative pace." "Stop knowing things about my ribs." "Understood." The terrain outside grew jagged. Strange flora pulsed faintly, bioluminescent veins glowing through mist that seemed to rise unnaturally from the ground. Ahead, the Obelisk Grove loomed, dozens of towering black spires, each humming with the residue of old power. "Here's a thought," Jace said. "What if we just park outside and let the horror beast wear Valir down for us?" "He'd probably recruit them," Lareska muttered. 12 chimed in. "Many horror beasts have flexible loyalties." "Good to know. I'll make friendship bracelets," Jace said. "You two go bond with ancient enemies. I'll set up a lemonade stand." The skimmer descended into the grove, skimming just above the ghost grass. The energy in the air grew heavy, like static charged with memory. As soon as they touched down, the ship's lights dimmed and flickered out. "Something's draining power," Lareska said, stepping out and drawing her blade. "That's a great sign," Jace said. "The best kind of sign, usually carved into tombstones." 12 hopped out behind them, scanning the grove. "There is movement among the roots." Jace froze. "Please say it's a squirrel." A figure slithered between the pillars. Not Valir, but something older. It had no legs, just coils of polished obsidian, and a face made of shifting symbols. It paused, tilted its head at them, and emitted a sound like a cat coughing up static. Lareska stepped forward. "It's a sentinel. Grove Guardian. These things were programmed centuries ago." "Programmed to do what?" Jace asked. "Judge." "Oh good, I always wanted to be judged by a math snake." The sentinel lunged, but 12 intercepted it mid-strike. Energy pulsed from his arms, and for a moment, the two constructs were locked in a dance of code and sparks. The grove trembled under the weight of old algorithms, awakening from slumber. Lareska reached a stone panel hidden beneath moss and old circuitry. She pressed her palm to it and winced as a needle pierced her skin. "Keying access. If the relay still functions, We can send a burst signal to the outer colonies. Jace ducked as the sentinel slammed into a nearby spire, missing 12 by inches. Hey, maybe send a message that says, "Help! Screaming! Bring snacks!" "Uplink engaged," the AI voice from the skimmer announced faintly. "Burst transmission ready." Lireska entered the code, sending location ping to the galactic fringe and the remnants of the Virelon Accord, if any of them still exist. "And if they don't?" Jace asked. She looked at him, unreadable. "Then we end this ourselves." 12 disabled the Sentinel with a final pulse that disintegrated its shell into harmless dust. Threat neutralized, but we are not alone. From above, the air shimmered. Valir descended, no longer in dramatic robes, but encased in a suit of living armor. Scales of black gold metal that moved with unnatural grace. Jace exhaled. "Why does he always get cooler gear?" Lireska stepped forward. "We finish this now." "No," Valir said, his voice metallic. "You end now." Jace raised his blaster. "Seriously? You rehearse those? They sound rehearsed." The grove darkened. The obelisks began to glow. Energy churned in the soil, and all around them, the past began to wake up. The grove erupted in light. Obelisks pulsed with ancient signals, feeding into one another like dominoes of lightning. The air twisted, folding in and out of itself, crackling with a rhythm too precise to be chaotic. Energy danced across the ground in lines that glowed for seconds before vanishing. Valor's armor fed on the charge, absorbing it through channels etched with forgotten sigils. His eyes blazed brighter than ever, and for the first time, Jace realized that the general wasn't powered by hatred alone. He was part of the system, a relic too stubborn to decay. Lireska stepped forward, her blade trembling faintly in her grip. It wasn't fear, it was resonance. The grove remembered her. She was once queen of this world, now a traitor to the crown she'd burned down. The obelisks didn't judge her, they acknowledged her. "You were never meant to survive this long," Valir said, flexing the armor around his limbs like it was skin. "The galaxy forgot us, but I haven't. I remember who we were, what we were owed." Lireska didn't flinch. "We were owed extinction. You just didn't get the memo." Jace, standing between two humming spires and trying very hard not to be vaporized by either, whispered to 12, "Do you happen to have a contingency plan for psychotic warlords with self-image issues?" 12's eyes flickered. "Contingency, deploy overload node. Downside, localized detonation." "Downside?" Jace echoed. "That's a you'll explode kind of downside." "I was designed for sacrifice." "Well, I wasn't," Jace shouted. "I was designed for eating snacks and avoiding responsibility." "Then run." Valir moved. Lireska met him mid-leap, blades clashing, light bending around them in waves. Each strike sang with the force of centuries. Each dodge sent echoes across the grove. It wasn't a duel. It was memory trying to correct itself. Jace flanked wide, ducked behind a fallen obelisk, and tried not to scream as energy scorched a crater nearby. 12! You explode too early, and I'm haunting your diagnostics. Timer initiated. Oh, perfect. The grove's systems were alive now, and Jace could see them. Lines of thought pulsing through the ground. Data streams rippling like veins. The entire grove was a machine, a cathedral of purpose long forgotten. He pulled a maintenance spike from his belt, jammed it into the nearest conduit, and did the one thing no one ever recommends when dealing with ancient tech. He winged it. Code surged up his interface. Unknown symbols, recursive patterns, broken language protocols. His implant sizzled in protest, and something in the back of his brain whimpered. But he kept at it, fingers moving like he knew what he was doing. He didn't. He never did. That was his charm. Lireska's blade finally shattered against Valar's armor. She staggered back, chest heaving, eyes locked on the enemy who refused to fade. He raised his weapon. Jace screamed, "Now!" The grove answered. The data spike lit up, feeding the signal Jace had accidentally hacked. Okay, recklessly hacked into the system's heart. It wasn't just a kill switch. It was a mirror. The grove reflected Valar's own power back at him, amplified, compressed, and shaped like justice with a grudge. Valar's armor cracked. The sigils seared. He roared, and it sounded like stone breaking apart. 12 walked into the center of the chaos. His frame glowed, overclocked past reason. "You are outdated," he said calmly, "and you are terminated." His chest opened like a blooming flower. A sphere of pure energy burst outward, not an explosion, but a rewrite. Light consumed the clearing. Silence followed. Not peace, just the breath between. When it faded, Jace found himself lying face down on moss that wasn't scorched, but humming gently beneath him. He groaned and rolled over. Did we win? Or am I just in the afterlife that smells like warm battery fluid? Lireska stood nearby, leaning on a half-cracked obelisk, blinking against the light. He's gone. The grove burned him out. The system, it chose me. 12 sat cross-legged on a stone slab, flickering slightly, arms held loosely around his knees. Systems recalibrating. Overload diverted through alternate route. You didn't explode? I decided I enjoy your jokes. They are statistically improbable and therefore valuable. Jace beamed. You big softy. Lireska exhaled slowly, like the weight of centuries finally unclenched its grip. The signal went out. Someone will hear it. We're no longer alone. Jace stood, brushing moss from his pants. What happens now? I don't know, she admitted. I've been a queen, a monster, a fugitive. I never thought I'd live long enough to be anything else. Well, Jace said, pointing to the horizon where the clouds were slowly parting, we've got a wrecked skimmer, one half-working murder bot, and maybe 2 protein bars left. Sounds like the beginning of something new. She looked at him, and something softened in her gaze. You saved me. I did a lot of screaming and improvising, but yeah, I guess I did. You're not what I expected from a soldier. He shrugged. I'm not what anyone expects. That's how I stay alive. They stood together as the light grew stronger, warmer, not the harsh burn of twin suns, but the promise of change. The grove hummed around them, quiet now, no longer a cage of ghosts, but a witness to the end of something, and maybe the start of something better. Behind them, 12 let out a soft beep. Query, breakfast still pending? Jace chuckled. Yeah, buddy, let's go find you some breakfast. Preferably something that doesn't try to kill us halfway through chewing. They walked into the light, 3 pieces of a broken war, trying to stitch themselves into a story that didn't end in fire. For the first time, Lireska didn't feel like she was walking away from death. She was walking toward life. The end.